Hello, Bali YouTube channel.
Imagine standing on a beach in Hawaii,
Right.
right? You were just hanging out, and you were listening to a local speak their native Hawaiian language.
Right, yeah.
And then you get on a plane, you travel over 5,000 miles west across the Pacific Ocean, you land on this rugged, towering mountain in Taiwan, and, well, you realize you were hearing some of the exact same words.
It is wild to think about.
It really is. So today we are taking a deep dive into this mystery, tracing footsteps that literally span half the globe.
Yeah, because, when most people think of Taiwan today, the brain usually jumps straight to modern headlines.
Right, like the booming tech industry or the origin of our microchips or just that intense geopolitical chessboard in East Asia.
Exactly. But today, we are stripping all of that away. We want to look at this island through a completely different lens.
Because, fundamentally, Taiwan is just a stunningly beautiful country, like visually breathtaking.
Oh, absolutely. When Portuguese sailors sailed past its shores in the 16th century, they were just so struck by these towering emerald peaks rising straight out of the ocean.
Which is why they literally named it Ilha Formosa.
Right, the beautiful island.
It's a beautiful island. And that brings us to our actual mission for this deep dive.
Yeah, we have a lot to cover today.
We do. We are unpacking a huge stack of sources today. We've got archaeological records, linguistic maps, and these deeply personal cultural archives from Taiwan's 16 recognized indigenous tribes.
It is a massive amount of data.
It is, but we are doing this to reveal a secret hidden within that incredibly lush, beautiful geography. We're going to show you that this island is the ancestral motherland of the most widespread maritime migration in human history.
Which is just a staggering concept.
It is, because if you look at the faces and you listen to the languages and you trace the DNA across the Pacific Ocean, you are going to realize that Taiwan's cultural roots stretch from the coasts of Africa all the way to Hawaii and Easter Island.
Yeah, the footprint is just massive.
Okay, so let's unpack this. To understand exactly how deep these roots go, we have to jump way, way back.
Right, long before any outside colonizers or modern empires ever showed up.
So where does the timeline actually start? Because it has to be ancient, right?
Oh, it is. If we dig into the soil on that eastern coast, the archaeological data points to human activity in Taiwan going back roughly 30,000 years.
Wow, 30,000.
Yeah, we are talking about Ice Age hunter-gatherers, which researchers call the Changbin culture. And because sea levels were so much lower during the last ice age, they literally just walked across a land bridge from the Asian continent.
Oh, so it wasn't even an island crossing at that point.
Exactly. They just walked over and settled right on that incredibly beautiful, rugged eastern coastline.
Because of the warm Kuroshio current.
Right. The current flows right past the coast and brings this constant, abundant supply of marine life right to their shores.
So the island has been inhabited for this incredibly long time.
Yeah.
But those Ice Age people aren't the ocean voyagers we are actually focusing on today.
Well, they are.
Because the sources highlight a very specific group, the Austronesian-speaking peoples. So let's define that first, because, Austronesian is one of those dense academic terms that gets thrown around a lot. What does it actually mean?
Well, literally, it comes from the Latin word for south and the Greek word for island. So it just means the languages of the southern islands.
Okay, that makes sense.
And around 6,000 to 5,000 years ago, a new, totally distinct cultural and linguistic group emerges in Taiwan's archaeological record.
The ancestors of the Austronesian language family.
Yes. They developed farming, some really complex weaving, and crucially, maritime skills.
Right.
Then, roughly 4,000 years ago, they did something totally unprecedented. They pushed their boats into the surf and began the longest, most audacious series of ocean voyages in human history.
I really want to make sure we capture the true scale of this because, they didn't just paddle over to the nearest sandbar.
Oh, far from it. Over the following millennia, they spread from Taiwan south to the Philippines, down through the thousands of islands of Indonesia.
That is already a huge distance.
And then they branched out in two completely opposite directions. One branch went westward, sailing all the way across the Indian Ocean to settle Madagascar.
Wait, Madagascar, right off the coast of Africa?
Yes, literally off the African coast.
Yeah.
And the other branch sailed eastward, deep into the Pacific, discovering and settling New Zealand, Hawaii, and Easter Island.
That is wild.
To put the sheer footprint of this into perspective for you, Austronesian languages currently make up 20% of all the languages spoken on Earth.
20%.
Yeah, spoken by over 386 million people, totally scattered across more than half the globe.
I mean, it is basically like Taiwan is the trunk of this massive linguistic family tree,
Yeah.
and the branches stretch across 3 whole continents.
That is a perfect way to visualize it.
But I have to play devil's advocate here for a second. Looking at a map, the distances are staggering.
Oh, absolutely.
We are talking about thousands of miles of rough, unpredictable open ocean. So how can researchers be absolutely sure and just confidently point to this one specific island and say, yes, ancient Stone Age people originated right here and deliberately traveled that far?
It does sound like a massive leap to make, doesn't it?
Yeah, it feels like a bit of a stretch if you just look at a map.
Well, it sounds like a leap until you actually look at how language evolves. The absolute bedrock of this claim relies on the linguistic diversity argument.
Okay, break that down for me.
In linguistics, there is a very reliable rule of thumb. The geographic location that has the highest concentration of language diversity is almost always the origin point of that entire language family.
Let me make sure I follow the mechanics of that. Is it basically because the languages have the longest amount of time to fracture and mutate and evolve in that one original spot?
Exactly.
While the groups that migrate away, well, they only take one specific dialect with them.
You've got it perfectly. Think of it like a family moving to a new town. The original neighborhood has all the different branches of the family, all the diverse cousins and uncles.
Right, the whole family tree.
But only one cousin moves away to start a new lineage somewhere else.
Okay, I see.
So when linguists map out the entire Austronesian language family, all those thousands of languages across half the globe, they categorize them into 9 primary sub-branches.
9 main branches. Got it.
Out of those 9 foundational branches, 8 of them are found exclusively among the indigenous tribes inside Taiwan.
Wait, really? 8 out of 9 are confined to just that one island?
Yes, just Taiwan. The remaining single branch, literally just one, accounts for every other Austronesian language spoken in the Philippines, Indonesia, Madagascar, and Polynesia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that immense localized concentration of linguistic diversity in Taiwan, that is the smoking gun. It statistically proves it is the original source.
That completely flips how you look at a map.
Yeah.
Because it means the ocean wasn't a barrier to these ancient people at all.
No, it was their highway system.
It was a connecting road. So, okay, now we have the starting line. But the sources outline this really fascinating threefold proof that traces their actual path across the water.
Right, starting with the very words they carried with them.
Yeah, because the linguistic echoes are incredibly persistent, aren't they?
They really are. I mean, even after 4,000 years of separation and isolation, core vocabulary words, the things you talk about every single day, they survived almost perfectly intact.
And numbers are a great example of this from the sources.
Mm.
In the indigenous languages of Taiwan, the word for the number 5 is lima.
Right.
And if you travel over 5,000 miles south to New Zealand, the Maori word for 5 is also lema.
Which is just incredible. And you see it with the word for I, too. The word is mata in Taiwan, and you'll hear mata spoken across Malaysia, Indonesia, and Polynesia.
But the detail that really stuck with me is the mythology.
Oh, the Maori legend.
Yes. The Maori of New Zealand still sing these songs and tell legends about this distant, mythical, ancestral homeland, this beautiful place they call Hawaii.
Which is essentially an oral history of their migration, just faithfully passed down through generations.
It gives you chills. But of course, scientists don't just rely on spoken words or myths.
No, we need physical proof, which brings us to the second part, the archaeological record.
Let's talk about the jade.
Right. So Taiwan's ancient Dipencan culture was incredibly skilled at crafting jade.
And we should clarify here, carving jade in the Stone Age is not like whittling a piece of pine wood.
Oh, not at all. It is an incredibly hard, dense stone.
And without any metal tools, they were literally using raw friction, right? Like sand and water and these rudimentary drills to just grind this stone down over hundreds of hours.
It was a mastercraft requiring immense patience. Archaeologists excavated these highly specific bell-shaped nephrite ornaments from Taiwan.
The ones that are super thin.
Yes, the craftsmanship is so precise that the jade is less than 1 millimeter thick in certain places. You can almost see light shine right through it.
That is unbelievable for the Stone Age.
But here's the critical part. An intact, perfectly identical bell-shaped jade ornament was dug up in the Philippines.
And they proved it came from Taiwan.
Yes, it was traced chemically back to the exact geological deposits and the specific crafting style of ancient Taiwan.
Wow, so they weren't just drifting aimlessly on the currents, they were actively navigating and trading these physical luxury goods across the open sea.
Exactly. They knew exactly where they were going.
But I'll be honest, the third proof in the sources is the one that really threw me for a loop.
The botanical barcode.
Yes, the botanical barcode. I see the notes here mentioning a chloroplast genome mutation called CP.17 in the paper mulberry tree.
It sounds incredibly dense, I know.
Yeah, I mean, what does a genetic typo in a tree have to do with mapping human travel?
Well, it is actually brilliant when you break down the biology of it. Across
Yeah.
the Pacific Islands, indigenous cultures use the inner bark of the paper mulberry tree to pound and weave into bark cloth.
Which is essential for their clothing and rituals, right?
Right, it's a staple resource. But here's the biological catch. In the Pacific environment, this specific tree reproduces asexually.
Meaning it doesn't drop seeds that just get blown across the ocean by the wind or carried by birds eating fruit.
Precisely. If a paper mulberry tree exists on a remote Pacific island, it is because a human being intentionally cut a sapling, put it in a boat, sailed across the ocean, and physically planted it in the dirt.
Oh, okay, I see where this is going now.
Yeah, so scientists decided to track a highly specific, harmless genetic mutation in the chloroplasts of these trees, that CP.17 marker you mentioned.
Because it reproduces asexually by cuttings, every new tree is essentially a clone of the last one.
Exactly, they are clones.
So if you track that
Hello,
specific
Buddy
mutation,
YouTube channel.
you aren't just tracking a plant spreading. You were literally looking at a time-stamped map of human footsteps.
You are tracking the exact lineage of the cuttings carried in those ancient boats. And they found this CP.17 mutation thriving all over the Pacific Islands.
But where did it start?
Well, when they looked for it outside the Pacific, that exact genetic signature exists natively in only one place on Earth.
Taiwan.
Taiwan. When these ancient explorers left that beautiful island, they packed these cuttings in their boats to ensure they could make clothing in whatever new world they found. They literally brought a living piece of their homeland with them.
That is just beautiful. Okay, so the DNA, the jade, and the vocabulary all line up perfectly.
Undeniably.
But I have to stop you and talk about the physical reality of this for a second.
Okay, sure.
Because I am looking at a map of the Pacific Ocean right now.
Mm.
And you do not cross thousands of miles of violent, unpredictable swells in a little raft made of lashed-together bamboo.
No, you definitely don't.
So how does a Stone Age society physically survive that journey?
You are hitting on the exact mystery that completely baffled marine archaeologists for decades. To really understand the engineering, we have to look at the people who still build these vessels today.
Yeah, Yami people, right?
Right, the Yami people, also known as the Tao. They live on Orchid Island, which is this small volcanic island just off the southeastern coast of Taiwan.
And looking at the photos in the archive, these are definitely not just hollowed-out tree trunks.
Not at all. Their traditional boats, which are called tatala, are absolute masterpieces of sustainable marine engineering.
Man, it looks so complex.
A large tatala is constructed from 27 individual wooden planks. The smaller ones use 21 planks. And the builders purposefully choose completely different types of wood for the keel, the sides, and the stern, based on how those specific woods handle tension and saltwater exposure.
Wow. But here is the real engineering marvel to me. How do you secure 27 loose planks together in crashing surf when you haven't invented metal yet?
Right, because you have no iron brackets, no steel nails, no modern waterproof epoxy.
Yeah, how does the boat not just completely shatter into pieces?
They use precision joinery and these highly specialized wooden nails called Vuraden.
Imagine staring down a 20-foot Pacific swell, and your entire survival depends on a wooden peg.
Well, it gets even smarter. They carve these wooden pegs from a specific tree that rapidly expands when it absorbs moisture.
Oh, that is genius.
So when the boat hits the saltwater, every single wooden nail swells up tightly inside its joint, creating this completely airtight, watertight seal across the entire hull.
That is master-level engineering, truly. And they paint them in these striking red, white, and black geometric patterns too, right?
Yes, with that very prominent circular sun-like totem carved right on the bow.
The guiding eye.
Exactly, the guiding eye. It is a deeply spiritual totem designed to ward off disaster and guide the vessel safely through the open ocean. It just proves that deep water navigation wasn't some accident for these people. It was a rigorously applied science.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the branches that left the island and populated the globe.
Right, the explorers.
But the people who stayed behind faced a totally different kind of survival test, didn't they?
Oh, completely.
Because their test wasn't mastering the ocean, it was mastering some of the most hostile vertical mountain terrain in all of Asia.
Yeah, the geography of Taiwan is no joke.
To really understand this beautiful mosaic of cultures, we need to look into the mountains and plains where the 16 officially recognized indigenous tribes live today.
And, the geography of the island fundamentally dictated their histories.
Okay.
Traditionally, anthropologists divide these tribes into two broad groups based on where they lived. You have the Plains tribes and the High Mountain tribes.
Yeah.
The Plains tribes lived on the flatter, much more accessible western side of the island. But because of that easy accessibility, they were largely assimilated over centuries of foreign contact.
But the high mountain tribes had a very different fate, right?
Yes, they did. The central mountain range of Taiwan is incredibly steep, dense, and rugged. It literally acted as a natural, impenetrable fortress.
So that hostile terrain physically blocked outside influence.
Exactly. It allowed these high-altitude tribes to preserve their unique languages, their social structures, and their identities deep into the modern era.
And the diversity among them is just staggering when you look at the sources. Let's look at a few, starting with the Amis, which is the largest tribe today, and the Puyuma.
Sure.
What jumps out immediately in the cultural archives for them is their matriarchal structure.
Yes, it's fascinating.
But it's not just a simple reversal of modern gender roles.
Yeah.
It is a very specific, deliberate balance of power.
It is really a system built entirely on societal stability. In traditional Amis culture, the women are the heads of the household. Lineage, property, and land are all inherited strictly through the mother's side.
So the women manage the homestead and the actual wealth of the family.
Right, but the men aren't marginalized at all. They just have a distinct role.
What do they handle?
The men dominate public affairs, tribal governance, and external defense. So you end up with this deeply interconnected social contract. The women provide the economic and familial stability, while the men manage the political and physical security of the entire village.
That makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
And you can really see the vibrancy of this culture in events like the Amos Harvest Festival.
Oh, absolutely.
Looking at the video footage from the archives, it is an explosive celebration. It functions almost like a Thanksgiving tribute to the ancestral spirits for a bountiful crop.
Yeah, filled with incredibly bright, colorful, traditional clothing.
And these massive synchronized rhythmic dances, it's really beautiful. But, here is where it gets really interesting. Because if we're talking about powerful cultural expressions, I want to pivot to the Bunun people.
The Bunun are incredible.
Because their traditions are purely auditory, right?
Yes, they live very high up in the central mountain peaks. And they are globally renowned for a musical tradition called the Pasibutbut.
Pasibutbut.
It is this complex 8-part harmonic singing style.
I listened to an audio recording of this, and I really need to explain how this works mechanically to the listener because it is surreal.
It really is unique.
It is not a choir singing off sheet music. A circle of men stands closely together, arms completely linked. There's no starting pitch given, no instruments playing.
Nothing but their voices.
Right. One man just begins this low hum, and slowly the others layer their voices over his, sliding up the scale in these incredibly tight, echoing intervals that just fill the mountain valleys.
It's mesmerizing.
It is. Why did they develop such a highly specific vocal technique?
Because it is literally a direct conversation with the divine. They sing the Pasibut to pray for an abundant harvest of millet, which is their staple survival crop in those mountains.
So they sing for their food.
Exactly. The spiritual belief is that if the harmony is flawless, if the voices rise perfectly together and the sound is truly beautiful, the gods will be pleased and reward the village with food.
Wow. So these stakes of the harmony were literally life and death.
Yes, perfectly beautiful harmony meant survival.
But the archives also make it clear that it wasn't all just farming and beautiful singing, right?
No, it wasn't.
Life in these beautiful mountains was brutal, and tribes like the Atayal, the Paiwan, and the Sioux were notoriously fierce warriors.
Extremely fierce.
Looking at the historical photos, you see these incredibly intense facial tattoos on the Atayal and Paiwan people. To a modern eye, it just looks like an extreme aesthetic choice. But was it just body art?
Far from it. It was basically a spiritual resume permanently written on the skin. You couldn't just request a tattoo. It was a symbol of immense honor that had to be earned.
How did they earn it?
Well, for women, a facial tattoo was earned by achieving absolute mastery in the complex, highly respected art of traditional weaving.
Okay, weaving.
But for men, it was earned on the battlefield. Specifically, it was a reward for successful headhunting.
Which obviously, I mean, to a modern listener, that sounds incredibly violent and jarring.
It is violent, but we have to understand the mechanics of it within their specific cultural framework.
Yeah.
It wasn't just random murder, it was a deeply sacred requirement. Claiming an enemy's head proved your courage and eliminated direct threats to your village's resources.
So it was defensive, in a way.
Yes, but crucially, it was believed to be a strict prerequisite for crossing the Rainbow Bridge into the spirit world after death.
Ah, I see.
So it was entirely about spiritual purity and ensuring the continued survival of the tribe.
And, what ties all 16 of these tribes together, despite the different languages and the vastly different practices, is this profound, unbreakable bond with the natural world.
Absolutely.
They didn't view themselves as sitting on top of the food chain, just conquering nature. They view themselves as an integrated piece of it.
They were part of the landscape.
Exactly. Take the Rukai people, for example.
Oh, they have a highly distinct mythology tied directly to the local fauna.
Yeah, they wear these beautiful lily decorations in their headdresses, symbolizing purity and bravery. But their origin stories are what's truly fascinating.
Right, about their ancestors.
They believe they are the direct, literal descendants of the Chinese moccasin snake and the Formosan clouded leopard.
It's just incredible.
They look at the dense jungles and the apex predators of this beautiful landscape and say, that is our family. They aren't separate from the beautiful island. They are literally born from it.
That deep integration is exactly what allowed them to survive in such a harsh environment for thousands of years.
Right. But, this brings us to a really harsh demographic reality that we have to discuss.
It does?
Because if these cultures are so robust and so
Right.
perfectly adapted to this island, why do indigenous people only make up about 2.5% of Taiwan's total population today?
To understand that, we have to take a really unflinching look at the mechanics of the last 400 years.
Because starting in the 1600s, Taiwan becomes the target of relentless outside colonization.
Yes, the sources outline a literal carousel of foreign regimes. And, we have to view this impartially, exactly as the historical record presents the facts.
We are just reporting what the archives show here.
Right. So the major shift begins in 1624 with the arrival of the Dutch East India Company.
And what were the Dutch looking for?
They wanted to extract resources, mostly sugarcane and deer hides, but they needed labor to do it. So their mechanism of control was to import massive numbers of Han Chinese laborers from the mainland to work those plantations.
And that single economic decision permanently altered the demographics of the Western Plains, didn't it?
It really did. It effectively pushed the indigenous plains tribes right out of their ancestral lands.
Wow.
Then the Dutch were ousted by Koxinga, who was a Ming dynasty loyalist and pirate. He set up his own brief kingdom, and that was followed by the Qing dynasty annexing the island.
So just one empire after another.
Exactly. For over 200 years, the Qing government struggled to control the mountain tribes. They even built literal boundary lines across the land to try and keep Han settlers from encroaching further, but the demographic tide was just overwhelming.
And then the 20th century arrives, bringing a totally different kind of empire to the island.
Yes. In 1895, the Japanese Empire takes control of Taiwan. And the Japanese brought modern industrialized warfare directly into the mountains.
They weren't just trading or building borders anymore?
No, they fought brutal, protracted guerrilla wars against the high mountain tribes. They used artillery, they built electric fences to blockade the mountains. It was actually under Japanese rule that the practice of headhunting was finally eradicated by absolute force.
So they forced the most isolated holdouts to submit to imperial authority.
Exactly.
But the shifting of power still wasn't over. Following World War II, the Japanese leave, and the Kuomintang, or the KMT, retreats to the island.
Right. And they imposed decades of strict martial law.
And their mechanism of control was forced assimilation, according to the sources. Indigenous languages were strictly banned in all schools. People were legally forced to completely abandon their tribal names and adopt Chinese names on all official documents.
It was a systematic top-down policy designed to erase the indigenous identity entirely and homogenize the whole population.
The languages and traditions were pushed to the absolute brink of extinction.
They really were. But they didn't break.
No, they survived.
And again, if we connect this to the bigger picture, we come right back to the landscape. That towering, rugged geography of the Central Mountains provided just enough physical isolation to act as a cultural time capsule.
The land itself protected the people.
Exactly. The geography protected the culture just long enough for the political climate to finally shift.
Which happened around the year 2000. Taiwan's democratization opened the floodgates for this massive cultural revival. The language bans were lifted. Indigenous names were legally restored on IDs.
It's a true rebirth.
It is. And, think about what that means for you listening to this today. When you scroll YouTube and you see a young Taiwanese indigenous artist singing a modern pop song in their ancient tribal language, or you see a modern designer bringing back the traditional weaving patterns of the Atayal,
Yeah.
you aren't just looking at a neat piece of art. You are witnessing the mechanical survival of a culture that absolutely refused to be erased by 400 years of global empires.
It is a profound testament to the resilience of human identity.
It really is. So to pull all these threads together, Taiwan is vastly more than its geopolitical headlines or its semiconductor factories.
Far more.
It is the majestic, beautiful motherland of the Austronesian people. It is a living, breathing museum of linguistics, of ancient DNA, and of the most audacious human explorers to ever brave the sea.
And, there is one final detail from the sources that I think perfectly encapsulates the value of what these tribes have preserved for the rest of us.
What's that?
Well, we talked earlier about the Yami people of Orchid Island, right? The ones who build those incredible wooden tatala boats to master the 20-foot swells.
Right, the ocean engineers without any metal.
Exactly. Well, when the Yami take those boats out to sea, they don't just harvest whatever they want. They operate under these incredibly strict ancestral laws governing exactly which fish can be caught and during which specific seasons.
Really, like a quota system.
Yes. For example, they have a dedicated season exclusively for catching flying fish. To catch them outside of that specific window or to overharvest other species while they're out there is considered a severe cultural taboo.
Wow. So they aren't just fishing, they are executing a prehistoric blueprint for sustainable ocean management.
Exactly. As our modern world struggles right now with industrial overfishing, collapsing ecosystems, and climate change, perhaps the most vital thing these ancient ocean-faring ancestors left behind wasn't just a linguistic family tree or, a genetic barcode in a mulberry plant.
Right.
It is the very instruction manual for how to live in harmony with our fragile planet. They understood millennia ago that the ocean isn't just an endless resource to be exploited, it is a home that must be meticulously respected.
That is incredibly powerful. When you look at the faces and you listen to the languages and trace that ancient DNA across the crashing waves of the Pacific, you realize we have so much left to learn from the beautiful island.
We really do.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and we'll catch you on the next one.